What if I told you that the pain you feel right now, that unexplainable anxiety, that sudden wave of sadness that hits you for no apparent reason, that feeling of being fundamentally broken, is not actually yours? What if the emotions that overwhelm you in your most vulnerable moments are echoes, reverberations of wounds that were inflicted before you even had the words to describe them? What if your childhood self has been trying to speak to you all along, and you have been too busy surviving to listen? Picture this. You are at a family gathering surrounded by people who are supposed to love you, and suddenly you feel invisible. Everyone is laughing, talking, connecting, and you are standing there with a smile frozen on your face, feeling like you are watching life through a glass wall. You cannot explain why your chest feels tight or why you have this desperate urge to leave. You tell yourself you are being ridiculous. These are your people. This should feel like home. But it does not. And that disconnection, that sense of being fundamentally alone, even in a crowd, is your childhood wound screaming. Or maybe you are in a relationship, and your partner says something innocent, a small comment about how you forgot to do something, and suddenly you are flooded with shame so intense it takes your breath away. Your rational mind knows this is an overreaction. It was just a reminder about the dishes. But your body is reacting as if you have been told you are worthless, unlovable, a burden. That is not your adult self responding. That is your wounded child, still flinching from criticisms that happened decades ago. Perhaps you find yourself in a work situation where you need to speak up, assert yourself, share your ideas, and your throat closes. Your heart pounds. Your mind goes blank. Everyone else seems so confident, so sure of their right to take up space, and you shrink into yourself, convinced that anything you say will be wrong, stupid, embarrassing. That silence, that self-erasure, is not who you truly are. It is a survival strategy you developed when it was not safe to be seen, when being noticed meant being hurt. Alan Watts, the philosopher who spent his life bridging Eastern wisdom and Western understanding, had a profound insight about this phenomenon. He said that we spend our entire lives running from ourselves, building elaborate defenses against our own nature, never realizing that the very thing we are running from is the key to our liberation. Your childhood wounds are not your enemy. They are messengers. And this video appeared in your feed right now because those messengers have become too loud to ignore. Watts understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to fully appreciate. He recognized that the human mind has an incredible capacity to split itself, to create a separation between who we think we should be and who we actually are. This split begins in childhood, and it is almost always a response to pain. When we are small, we are completely dependent on our caregivers. We cannot survive without them. So when something in our environment threatens that bond, whether through neglect, criticism, chaos, or abuse, we do not blame them. We cannot afford to. Instead, we blame ourselves. This is the birth of the wounded child that lives within you. It is the part of you that absorbed the message that something was fundamentally wrong with you, that you needed to be different, better, smaller, quieter, more perfect in order to be loved. And that wounded child does not disappear when you grow up. It goes underground. It becomes the silent operator of your nervous system, triggering alarm bells at any situation that remotely resembles the original wound. Watts spoke extensively about the illusion of the separate ego, this false self we construct to navigate a world that told us our true self was not acceptable. He compared it to a cat trying to bite its own tail, this endless, exhausting chase after an identity that was never real to begin with. Your childhood wounds are intimately connected to this illusion. They are the raw material from which your false self was constructed. Every defense mechanism, every mask, every performance of okay that you have perfected over the years traces back to a moment when your authentic self felt too dangerous to reveal. Let me pause here for a moment, because I know that what we are discussing is not just theoretical for you. Right now, as you listen to these words, you might be recognizing patterns you have lived with for so long that they feel like fundamental aspects of who you are. You might be starting to see that the anxiety you thought was a character flaw, the depression you believed was chemical, the relationship difficulties you attributed to bad luck, all of these have roots in experiences you may not even consciously remember. When was the first time you learned that it was not safe to be yourself? When did you first discover that your needs were too much, your emotions too intense, your very existence somehow inconvenient? If you feel comfortable, share in the comments. Your story, even just a fragment of it, might be the exact words someone else needs to hear right now to feel less alone in their own struggle. Watts had a beautiful way of describing the healing process. He talked about the wisdom of insecurity, this paradoxical idea that true peace comes not from building stronger walls, but from having the courage to be vulnerable. Your childhood wounds scream because they have been locked away, suppressed, denied. They are like children who have been ignored for too long. The more you push them down, the louder they become. Modern trauma research confirms what Watts intuited decades ago. We now know that traumatic memories are stored differently than normal memories. They are held in the body, in the nervous system, in patterns of muscle tension and physiological response that operate below conscious awareness. This is why you can logically know that you are safe, that you are loved, that you are successful, and still feel that gnawing sense of threat, that persistent feeling that something terrible is about to happen. The body keeps the score, as trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk famously said. Your childhood wounds are not just psychological. They are written into your flesh, encoded in the way you breathe, the way you hold your shoulders, the way your stomach tightens when you sense disapproval. This is why simply thinking positive thoughts or trying to rationalize away your pain does not work. You cannot think your way out of something that lives beneath thought. Watts would have appreciated this understanding. He was always suspicious of the Western tendency to try to fix everything through analysis and willpower. He knew that the mind cannot solve problems created by the mind. Instead, he pointed toward something more radical: acceptance. Not passive resignation, not giving up, but a deep, compassionate acknowledgement of what is actually happening inside you. When your childhood wounds scream, they are not asking to be fixed. They are asking to be heard. They are asking for the attention and care they never received when they were first formed. The wounded child within you does not need you to go back in time and change what happened. That is impossible. What that child needs is for you, the adult you have become, to finally turn toward them with compassion instead of away with shame. Here is the practice that Watts would suggest, though he would probably caution against turning it into another achievement to pursue. Simply sit with your pain. Do not try to change it. Do not analyze its origins. Do not judge yourself for having it. Just be present with it, the way you would be present with a frightened child who needed comfort. This is harder than it sounds, because everything in our culture teaches us to run from discomfort. We have a pill for every pain, a distraction for every difficult emotion, an explanation for every inconvenient feeling. But running only makes the wound more powerful. It is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The energy you expend keeping it down is exhausting, and eventually, it always shoots back up with even more force. Your childhood wounds appearing in your life right now is not a sign that you are broken or regressing. It is a sign that you are finally safe enough, strong enough, to face what you could not face before. This is actually good news, though it may not feel that way when you are in the midst of the pain. Watts would remind you that you are not your wounds. You are the awareness in which the wounds arise. You are the sky, not the clouds that pass through it. This distinction is crucial. When you identify with your pain, when you say I am anxious or I am damaged or I am unlovable, you collapse the space between yourself and your experience. There is no room to breathe, no perspective from which to observe. But when you can say there is anxiety arising or there is an old wound being activated, you create a gap. In that gap is freedom. In that gap is the possibility of responding differently than you always have. The philosopher spoke often about the cosmic joke, this tragicomic situation where we spend our lives searching for something we already have. Your wholeness was never lost. It was only hidden behind the defenses you built to survive childhood. As those defenses become unnecessary, as you grow in awareness and compassion, your natural state of peace begins to reveal itself. Not because you have achieved something, but because you have stopped blocking what was always there. If you have made it this far in this video, I want you to know that your presence here is not accidental. Something in you recognized these words, resonated with this message, because you are ready to begin a different relationship with your pain. You are ready to stop running and start listening. You are ready to transform your childhood wounds from unconscious operators of your life into conscious portals of healing and growth. Consider subscribing to this channel if you want to continue this journey together. Each video is an invitation to go deeper into understanding yourself, to find freedom from patterns that have kept you stuck, to discover the peace that exists on the other side of your pain. You are not alone in this. There is a whole community here. Thousands of people walking the same path, asking the same questions, finding their way home to themselves. Share in the comments what resonated with you today. What wound is screaming for your attention right now? What pattern are you finally ready to face? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take their own first step toward healing. We are all in this together, and together we remember the wholeness that was never actually lost.